What's going on, guys? My name's Grant, I'm from the Hermit duo, and today I'm going to bring you the first of experimentary video. We're going to do do's and don'ts for what we want to see and what we don't want to see in the new Dragon Age when it's finally announced and released. If this goes well, it may be the first of many, and it may just be the first of a similar vein of videos, so let's get going. So in first place we've got fur coat, no knickers. And this means basically with Dragon Age 2 it was a massive step down from Dragon Age 1, because while the graphics were there and the textures were high quality and it was a very pretty looking game, the game itself and the story had no actual substance. You'd go from area to area and it'd all look bland, similar, and the game just lacked a lot of what the first game had in abundance. And the story was awful and almost non-existent. There were the occasional plot point that would be weakly strung together after a few hours of gameplay, and it just wasn't as enjoyable a game as the first one. And then, yeah, of course, Inquisition came along and it was a much better game, but what we don't want to see in Dragon Age 4 is another return to pattern where the next game is a step down. I'm hoping it'll be more like Mass Effect, where each game brought with it its own improvements and it ended up with a really enjoyable game, even if the ending to Mass Effect 3 was not enjoyable whatsoever. It was terrible, all the endings, including the new ones, which basically just made you think, oh, Shepard's alive, but they left him there anyway. In second place, there's more character customization options. Now, with this, I mean, there should be more body sculpting options. You should be able to make yourself a canary who's weedy or an elf who's stocky, because even though it might not fit the lore, it might be enjoyable for your character, who's supposed to be a one-off anyway, to have a one-off body type. And it can't reasonably take them that much more than the massive amount they've already got to put into it, just to make all the races and all the classes and all the armors to fit them. So that is something I'd like to see put into Dragon Age 4. Maybe even just sliders that affect chest width and torso depth like in Ark Survival Evolved. Just something like that that'd make your character more unique to you, because I think that'd make the whole getting immersed into the game so much easier. Next up is, I'd like to see a much more developed character background for the main protagonist in the next game. Now, this is more from the first Dragon Age, where you were given a few different options for where your character came from, and you'd choose one and go with it, but that basically gave more of a third dimension to your character. You know where he or she came from, why they are in the situation they're in, and because you know that, you can sympathise with the character more and get much more immersed in the story to come. Like with the elf, you could either be one from an alienage who's been racially discriminated against by humans your entire life, or you can be one that's sort of worked for a noble family, so you haven't really had to put up with that as much, but you have to a certain extent. And then something, comes about to make it so you're forced to join the Grey Wardens in order to save your life. And because you know that, you can get to know the character much better than whereas in, say, Dragon Age 2 or even Dragon Age Inquisition to a point, you just plonked in at the start of the game and expected to go with it, and you don't know anything about your own character's background, which makes little sense to me.
Unless we act, the breach may grow until it swallows the world.
So fourth in the list, I'd like more difference between areas, and this is more of a jab at Dragon Age 2 again, because I really didn't enjoy that game. You'd go from area to area and all the areas would be too similar, too bland, too washed out, and it got to the point where every dungeon was exactly the same. It had exactly the same layout, but the only difference was it'd have different spawns, different mobs. So you go into a dungeon that was, say, to fight the dragon with the miners, and you go through killing spiders, bandits, etc., and then at the end you kill like drakes and the dragon itself. But then a few missions later you go to an entirely different dungeon that had exactly the same layout, so you knew exactly where you had to go, but the only difference was the bandits, the drakes, the dragon had been replaced with other creatures to fit more to that quest. And now I can understand why they did that, because as I remember, Dragon Age 2 was a very rushed out game, and it was just more of a placeholder between the first Dragon Age and Dragon Age Inquisition. But I think I would have much preferred BioWare to take the time to make Inquisition and add a few more years to the wait than rush out another game that people just don't enjoy. And I can make the same argument for games like Borderlands the pre-sequel, where the game was just an absolute letdown because it wasn't made by the same developers who had made the first two games, and it was just not up to scratch. It wasn't up to the standard that the games before it had already set. And as I say, I'd much rather just wait another year or two for the game to be developed. Like The Witcher 3, it was delayed 3 times, and yeah, I can admit that I was getting quite pissed off at just how long it was taking us to create the game. But by the time the game was released, it was amazing. It was so long you could get fully immersed, and there was no complaints about it really, apart from a few bugs and glitches which got fixed not long after release. Number 5 is a much more in-depth character skill development. Now this is more with Inquisition really, because while they offer you a few trees that you can spec into, there's no real pressure on being careful with your points, because for one you can respec anyway, but for two you're given plenty of points so you can max out a couple of different trees. It's the same with Borderlands, but with Borderlands it fits better. With games like Dragon Age, that you should have to do a specific build in order to fight the way you want to. And it'd make much more sense because warriors in real life have to focus on certain skills while neglecting others. And I think this, again, would add a lot more uniqueness to your character, because the odds of two people having exactly the same build with exactly the same points, if there's a lot of skills available but points are limited, are very slim. And it'd just make the game, again, much more enjoyable, because your character would be much more tailored to your playstyle. And I think that would just cause the entire experience to be much better for you, and it'd make you feel less let down by the developers that you just spent, what, $60, £40 just to buy their game. And of course, the big one, no return to human-only play. Inquisition added back races to the game, whereas 2 knocked you down from human, elf and dwarf to human only. And I don't want them to go back to that because I really didn't enjoy playing as Hawk or the female Hawk, whichever one. Because he was a pre-made character, there was no personalisation to him. If you did make a customised character, it just looks ridiculous compared to the bog standard Hawk. And if with Inquisition they made it so you could play as human, elf, dwarf or canary, and I think the main reason they added canary in was as an apology for only human being available with the second game, which makes sense, but I don't want to see them take a step back and reduce down to just human gameplay so that they can add other features. I'd rather they take the time to add those features and make it so you can choose the different races, because being able to choose the race again adds another level of uniqueness to your character, plus the fact it lets you choose which race you prefer, because if you don't enjoy playing as a human and your only option is to play as a human, you're not going to enjoy that game. Whereas if you enjoy playing as, say, a canary with huge body type, huge horns, and you just look like a powerful thing that nobody wants to mess with, then you can, and you enjoy it much more because you can play as well as you enjoy it. And I think to take a step back would be a massive mistake. Anyway, that's it for this video. I'd like to thank you for listening. If you think there's anything we missed, anything you don't want to see, anything you do want to see, please leave a comment down below. And who knows, we might even do another video and more things we want to see in the game. But again, thank you for watching. Please leave a comment down below, smash the thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.